Metroid, the series that focuses on lone bounty hunter Samus Aran. You know, that one character from Smash Bros. The series that focuses its gameplay loop of backtracking to places that you've been as you upgrade your gear to further progress in the game world. Also known as a Metroidvania. See, the series name is even in the genre name. Talk about genre defining. My personal experience with the series began with the release of Metroid Dread, which got me hooked on the Metroid franchise. And from there, I decided it was time for me to explore what the rest of the series had to offer. And so, thanks to remasters, Nintendo Switch Online, hacked 3DSs, and cheap aftermarket prices, I think I am more than qualified to rank all 14 games in the series. This is my Metroid tier list. Now before we get started, I just want to list off the few guidelines that help me put each game in its respective tier. As I go through each game, I rank them mostly on each title's key gameplay features, music, and overall vibes I had while playing the game. I did not, however, let the story of each game impact my ranking unless I otherwise state so, especially since each game in the series is just a small portion of the overarching story of our bounty hunter. Also, this is definitely not an in-depth review of each game, as this is just a simple tier list video. As such, I just want to focus on my main key takeaways of each game. This is by no means a perfect list, but it is my list, so let me know what changes you'd make in the comments below. Now without further ado, let's get started. Metroid, the first game in the series releasing on the NES, and the first game to start the genre of the Metroidvania. Now let's start with some things that I like about this game, which is only really one thing, and that's its banger OST. That Brinstar theme is just so damn iconic, but beyond the music, there's not much I really like about the first game in the series. Its lack of in-game map system makes this game a chore to play. Like, you have to be a cartographer or some shit like that to actually like this game. Also, being an NES game, it was made to be tough as nails. So be prepared to just constantly die and die and die over and over again. It really doesn't help that since this is also an NES game, an early NES game at that, it just does not handle well. Like, the gameplay or the controls just feel really bad. So if you were to play this game, I would recommend playing it through Switch Online or some emulator with rewind and save states, especially since the US version of this game uses a password save system, which really sucks when you die and respawn and have to input an entire password just to respawn with all the gear you already had. Just play this game with save states, which is why I put this game in C tier. Metroid 2: Return of Samus. This game released on the Game Boy, and oh my god, how is this better than the first entry on the NES? The game just controls so much better. You can finally shoot downwards when falling, and Metroid can crouch now? Also, some of the new power-ups that were introduced in this game are really cool. I mean, we got the Spider Ball here. All hail the Spider Ball. I love this ability. It just adds so much to the exploration in this game. Also, this game has save stations. Like, this is a Game Boy game. How is this much better than the NES game? I don't understand. Nintendo, explain it to me. Now to talk about the OST. It's okay, but man, SR388's Surface theme is just such a bop. Now with this game being on the Game Boy, it does have more of a linear exploration, especially since it makes pick up and play make more sense, since, you know, it is on a handheld. You grab your Game Boy, kill a Metroid, then set it down. Backtracking is still here, but mainly just for item collection, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I still recommend playing this game with a guidebook or some sort of third-party map, but that's not really necessary for this title, unless if you want to collect everything. B tier. Super Metroid, released for the Super Nintendo, and oh my god, this is just the trifecta of the first three games. This game has the best handling compared to the last two entries. Shooting at an angle is great thanks to the newly added Super Nintendo shoulder buttons. The controls are still a little floaty for my liking when compared to later games, but it's not that bad. It's not really a fault, just a preference thing. Also, this game shows the first signs of shine sparks for higher end gameplay, utilizing speed booster storage to earn extra items for the hardcore crowd. Also, towards the end of the game, you get this X-ray vision, which is very helpful for completionists to go back and item hunt. That also means you don't need to use a damn guide to collect everything, especially since the game has an actual map this time, though future games have better map systems. The atmosphere of this game is great. It has wonderful pixel art. I mean, are those dead bodies on the title screen? Also, this game had voice acting.
The last Metroid is in captivity. The galaxy is at peace.
Though it's really just a few lines at the beginning of the game, but it was huge to hear back in the 90s, so I've heard. The music and ambience brings the lone bounty hunter vibes that the series maybe hasn't had since its creation up until now. Also, that green Brinstar OST is by far the best part of this game. Or maybe is it Norfair? You know, this whole game just has a great soundtrack. Last thing to say about the game is just that it's really good. Has a great recap cutscene of the first two games at the beginning, has crazy twist at the end of the game, but I don't want to spoil too much because I just want you guys to play this game. Don't be afraid to use rewind to make the game a bit easier on yourself, but the game is pretty forgiving with all the save stations around. I'd love to see a remaster of this game just because I want to see Metroid Dread level of detail in this game. Though for the Super Nintendo, the pixel art is just so goddamn good. It's just unbelievable. A tier. Metroid Fusion, released for the Game Boy Advance. And visually, this game is very similar to Super Metroid, at least pixel art wise. It has a really good visual style, and I love it, especially for the small handheld. The controls handle the best compared to the last few games. Metroid can finally hang on to ledges, which is actually surprisingly a game changer. Being on a handheld, this game is a bit more linear, so the navigation system kind of guides you on where you need to go. I kind of love this though. I struggled with getting lost in Super Metroid, and while having an in-game map kind of helped, I still felt the need to look up stuff from time to time. Whereas in Fusion, I had no problems trying to figure out where I needed to go, with only a few paths that would take me where the game wanted me to go. Unfortunately, that just makes the game pretty linear, and thus creating the only reason to backtrack towards the end of the game is to get 100% of items. This game also introduces the SAX, which the internet makes it seem like you run into this guy more than 3 times, but in my gameplay it was quite literally only 3 times. Either way, it made the game kinda scary as cutscenes leading up to each encounter made me wonder when I'd have to run away from the SAX, much like the Emmys in Dread. The music is kinda subpar in my opinion, but Sector 1 and Sector 3's music is a bop. You've probably been hearing a bunch of that in the background. A tier. Metroid Zero Mission, also released on the Game Boy Advance. It is the first remake we will be talking about in this tier list, and is the only way I will ever play the original Metroid story again. And that is because Zero Mission is a full-on remake of Metroid NES. It borrows everything that made Fusion and Super so good. The controls are less floatier than the original, crouching is here, ledge grabbing is here. They even brought in the newer games' abilities like Super Missiles and Speed Booster, just to give a few examples. The game's added cutscenes are a nice touch. The music sounds so good, especially coming from Game Boy Advance hardware. The OST from the original Metroid was awesome. Zero Mission just makes it sound even better. The Zero Mission epilogue section that comes in at the end of the game is also pretty fun to play. Playing as Zero Suit Samus and hiding from space pirates, showcasing how vulnerable Samus is without her power suit, is a nice change to the gameplay though. And earning that Chozo power suit at the end and just breezing through all the enemies on your way out of the ship is just so satisfying. Zero Mission is definitely a must-play over the original, plus beating the game actually allows you to play the original game, which is honestly a neat touch and add-in that I think most remakes should do. S tier. Metroid Prime and Prime Remastered, releasing on both the Nintendo GameCube and the Nintendo Switch. Now I'm lumping both the original and remastered in the same space due to only minor key differences that I don't think really changes its tier. First off, the controls. Now, I've played both versions and I'm happy to say I don't mind the original's tank controls, and the newly added dual stick controls or the added Wii Motion pointer controls from Metroid Prime Trilogy are just nice ways to have multiple different ways of playing the game. The visuals are just perfect showcases for their respective hardware. Though I do think remastered looks a bit better, the original GameCube version of Prime still looked really good for its hardware. Both games are just showpieces of what the hardware can handle. Anyway, Metroid Prime is Metroid's first step into the 3D space, and honestly, it's a really good step. It has everything a Metroidvania could have. It has great backtracking for key items, slowly opens up secrets and areas to explore, everything a Metroidvania does. Its 3D map system is also pretty great, but it loses the ability to see if any items are still available in a specific area like Super Metroid has. Also, the game has a hint system, which is toggleable. You can turn it on and off. The hint system helps guide you through the game by telling you where you need to be going next, but it doesn't tell you how you're supposed to go there. This game added so much lore, thanks to the newly added scan visor, which allows a bunch of information to be fed to the player. Now, I'm too lazy to read all of the lore, but I love watching all of the lore videos that people make dissecting all of the Chozo and pirate logs that are just left in the game by the developers. Other visors, like the thermal and X-ray, also add interesting gameplay mechanics, seeing certain enemy weaknesses, more easily spot some invisible enemies, better sight in dark lit areas, the whole 9 yards. All in all, it's a really great transition to 3D for the franchise, and Retro Studios knocked it out of the park. The music is just so damn great. Vendrana Drifts, and Talon Overworld. Just adds so much to the lonely atmosphere Metroid games have. S tier. Now back to the handheld releases, we have Metroid Prime Hunters. It is another 3D Metroid game, but on the DS. And because it's on the DS, it has many issues, but it is still impressive that it was made for the DS hardware. The game only has about 4 main worlds, which you're forced to revisit 3 of the worlds like 2 times each, which is okay given that it's technically a Metroidvania, but the worlds are separated by a menu as you have to fly between the worlds, which personally, I don't like the separation of the different worlds. When revisiting each of the worlds, you get to the point where you have to fight the same 2 to 3 bosses over and over again, and they get old pretty quick. The music here actually kinda sucks. There's really nothing good to listen to. The controls kinda suck as well. I don't like using the touchscreen to aim since it's a bit cumbersome to hold your DS like that, since my hands start to cramp after 30 minutes of gameplay. That's why I played the game with a modded new 3DS for dual stick controls. Or you could also play through an emulator and use mouse controls if you prefer that way. I think the only cool part about this game is the other bounty hunters that it introduced. Though unfortunately, each bounty hunter has a basic backstory and it's not too in-depth. However, we did get Sylux, and although we still know next to nothing about Sylux other than that he hates Samus and the Galactic Federation, it's cool that he will be a part of Metroid Prime 4, but again, we still know nothing about the guy. The main gimmick of this game was its multiplayer, which is kinda why the different bounty hunters exist gameplay wise. I never got to experience as I never had a chance to do the online since I never had a game until much further down the line. Plus, I don't have enough DSs or copies of the game, or even enough friends willing to try out the multiplayer with me, so unfortunately I'm out of a loss. Especially since I heard it's kind of the best part of the entire game supposedly, though when is the internet ever wrong over a Metroid take? F tier. Metroid Prime Pinball. You like pinball? Well, so do I. S tier. No hesitations here. Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. Also released for the Nintendo GameCube. It's a great continuation of the Prime trilogy story so far. It introduced new character species like the Luminoth, which also go to show that in the Metroid franchise, there is more than just the Chozo that are a very advanced and intelligent species, which I think is pretty cool. It also gave us fan favorite Dark Samus, which is really just another Samus clone that we have to fight, though her boss fights are pretty fun and engaging. Gameplay wise, I don't think it's as good as Metroid Prime 1. I don't like the beam upgrades as much. The dark and light beams are just okay. It's a cool gameplay mechanics dealing with dark and light, and there are upgrades to make each beam stronger, but dealing with the ammo of each beam is very cumbersome. Like, I already have to go out of my way to refill my missiles, now I have to worry about how much ammo my dark and light beams have. Kinda sucks. Also, the dark world deals damage to you unless you sit in these light bubbles till you get the light suit, which also, the new suit designs, the light suit and the dark suit, are kind of okay. I don't really like them that much, but they look kind of cool, but also not at the same time. The screw attack is back, which in a 3D Metroid game, it was kind of wild to see in my first playthrough. Also, being able to use the boost ball with the spider ball to hop between spider ball tracks is just brilliant for new puzzles and explorations. All the boss fights are pretty fun in this game, especially Quadraxis. Utilizing the spider ball in a boss fight just makes me so happy. Also, the OST is pretty great. Torvus Bog is easily the coolest sections of this game. The music is also pretty fantastic. Though playing the subterranean Torvus Bog music, which is really just a remake of the Lower Brinstar from Super Metroid, gets you false copyright claims on YouTube, so thanks YouTube for your broken automatic copyright systems. Regardless, I do think the game is great to play through. Freeing Aether from its dark counterpart is pretty cool, and it's an awesome story, and I think the game is pretty fun to play. I'm gonna put this in B tier. Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. Made for the Nintendo Wii and is the third entry in the Prime trilogy. This is a tricky game for me to rate as I love a lot of the things that they added to this game. Like, they added full voice acting here, which is pretty crazy for a Metroid game. Also, a late game feature allows you to see where the remaining collectibles are that you may have missed and how many left you have to collect. Utilizing Samus's gunship for certain puzzles and fights is pretty cool. I mean, like, blowing down enemies with the gunship's missiles is like pretty badass, not gonna lie. Though there are a few things that I cannot stand about this game. Much like Prime Hunters, I don't like disrupting the gameplay to fly to different planets. If it weren't for this, I wouldn't place this entry so low on the chart. Though for story reasons, I do understand why you have to visit multiple different planets. You're supposed to go around the galaxy, go take down each of the Phazon Leviathans before each planet is affected in order to save the galaxy/universe, blah 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 blah. I just prefer my Metroid games to stick to one planet. At least we do get to see the Space Pirates' homeworld, which I was not expecting, and it's pretty cool. And playing around inside of Samus's gunship is such a neat touch that the developers did not need to include, so I guess there's that too. It really just makes me want a Metroid VR game. Come on Nintendo, please make this happen. Also, I'm not a huge fan of the Hyper Beam, but at least it makes Samus a badass that kicks ass, so I guess it's within character. The OST I would say is about the same as Prime 2's. The title screen and credits are my favorite aspect of the game's music track. And the pirate homeworld is just a reference to Super Metroid's Criteria space pirate theme. Oh, and we cannot forget about Rulez's battle theme. Which brings me to the characters. Much like Metroid Prime Hunters, that's right, this game shows us more bounty hunters of the Metroid universe. Too bad we had to kill all three of them. I'm sorry I was forced to treat you wrong, my sweet Prince Rundus. B tier. Metroid Other M, also released on the Wii. This game is the most story-focused in the series. It gave us backstory on who Samus's commanding officer Adam was. It also gave us insight into a bit of Samus's relationship with the Galactic Federation. Man, do I want a game that's a prequel to everything and just focuses on her time as a Federation soldier. That would be so cool. This game has voice acting again, which, by the way, is so freaking good and so much better than Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. People may crap on
baby
quotes and shitty Samus voice acting, but I think Jessica Martin played a pretty good Samus. Story-wise, I thought the story was pretty good. People crap on Samus's reaction to seeing Ridley, as she kind of had a panic attack, but wouldn't you if you realized that a clone was made of your nemesis you swore you had already killed about 3 times now, especially since said nemesis had killed your parents when you were little? I get that Samus is supposed to be a badass that tears through everything, but Samus, like you and I, has emotion, so adding that scene of panic just makes so much sense to me. Besides, she overcame it anyway and killed the clone of Ridley. If that ain't badass, I don't know what is. Though what people should crap on the story for is 1. Adam not allowing Samus to use her entire arsenal. Power bombs I get, as it would kill everyone on the ship, though not really gameplay wise, but not letting her use her Varia feature in a lava area for even a little bit is just absurd, Adam. What the hell? I must admit though, I almost cried when Adam decided to take his own life in order to destroy the remaining clones of Metroids. The story of this game just really got to me, so if you ignore some of the lazy writing, it's pretty great. Anthony Higgs is best character and I will die for him. Gameplay wise, it's an interesting style of gameplay, using one Wii remote and switching between holding it vertical and horizontal, which at first I didn't really jive with, but it did grow on me. This game is more of a 3D Metroidvania than the Prime games, especially with how fast Samus moves compared to the Prime games. Plus, the speed booster makes a return for some really cool segments. Like Super Metroid, the game does show you where hidden items are on the map, which I love in my Metroid games. It helps me with 100% item collection. The OST is unfortunately very lackluster, but man does that Ridley theme go hard. Anyway, I'm gonna put this game in A tier. I don't care what you say, I liked this game. Don't take the internet's opinion or even my own opinion as fact, and just play this game and form your own opinion on it. Metroid Prime Federation Force, released for the Nintendo 3DS. The only game I have yet to complete as of making this video, but what I have played of this game is pretty great. This is the first game in the series that you don't play as Samus, you play as Federation troopers using armor to try and mimic Samus's power. Unfortunately, that game has a chibi art style, and the unfortunate part about it is that Metroid Prime 4's intro shows us that these are the mechs we were controlling in this game. I don't mind the chibi art style, but it greatly undersells how big and powerful these mechs are. Lots of people gripe about the whole Samus mind control boss fight thing, but I think it leads to a wacky twist that no one expects, even if it's totally against Samus's character, as realistically she'd never get captured by the space pirates. Anyway, this game is multiplayer focused. Playing single player is a slog since it was not really made for single player. The multiplayer is pretty fun, and it's great to sit down with at least one other person to do a mission or two and then set the game down. The game gives us this chip system for temporary upgrades. It's a little confusing for first timers, but is a bit helpful to strategize with your team on how each of your mechs will be built. You can focus on being a tank or a healer essentially. I must say, I prefer playing this game on a new 3DS or utilizing the Circle Pad Pro is a must, as dual stick controls is just the best way to play this game. The 3D gimmick is great, unless you have to use the gyro for aiming due to not having a C-stick. Anyway, I know I didn't dive too deep into this game, but I'm still going to put it in B tier. It might not be a good Metroid game, but it has great multiplayer and I like it. Hopefully we get a remake of this with a new art style to better convey the size of these mechs. But other than that, I think it's a pretty good game. Metroid Samus Returns, also released for the Nintendo 3DS. It is the second remake of the series of the second game of the series. It is a wonderful remake with lots of added features, music, bosses, etc. Gameplay wise, they added these things called Aeon abilities, I think that's how you pronounce it. Some make you stronger, some make you faster, but the most important one is the Pulse Radar, which highlights breakable walls, which helped me discover some of the items and secrets in the game. Honestly, why wasn't this ever added in previous Metroid games? I know we had the X-Ray and Super Metroid, but I think the Pulse Radar does a much better job of doing this. Countering was also introduced. It's a flashy move that gives you more health and missiles when you successfully counter an enemy. Plus it just looks fucking badass. The extra section of this game added after defeating the Metroid Queen just adds to the story of how attached to the baby Samus was, since it helps you out in exploring the rest of the world to collect the remaining items before tackling the final boss. Which, by the way, I was totally not expecting them to shoehorn Ridley into this game, but man am I glad he's here. His epic boss theme during this final moment of the game is just fucking awesome. Which leads me to the OST. They remade the SR388's Surface theme and it just sounds so flipping good. Lower Norfair / Magmore Caverns theme is back and better than ever. Overall, it's a great remake, and it did well enough to give us the next game in the series thanks to developer Mercury Steam proving themselves capable of a Metroid game. A tier. And last but not least, Metroid Dread. My first Metroid game and what got me into the series. The recap of previous games in the intro was really helpful for a first timer like myself at the time, so I love that they included that. Gameplay wise, the counter system returns for Samus Returns and I freaking love it. Nailing the timing on certain bosses and watching the cinematic of Samus just blasting missiles down the enemy's throats just sells how much of a badass Samus is. She truly is Nintendo's Doom guy. I also have this clip of me nearly missing an enemy's attack, and thanks to the counter system I was able to get out of its clutches. Man was I super stressed during these encounters. The Aeon abilities return again, and I must say I love these abilities much better in Metroid Dread. Flash shift to avoid enemy attacks and go through fast closing doors is pretty cool. Phantom Cloak to hide from enemies is a nice added addition, though it doesn't really work that well. And especially the Pulse Radar returning, which again highlights breakable walls, which helped me collect all the items in this game because I just wanted to 100% it because I was just having so much fun with this game. Voice acting is back, though it's only really for Adam, Samus's computer. Though the one Chozo line that Samus speaks made me go berserk during my first playthrough. I was not expecting that. Sorry to spoil the ending, but seeing Samus turn into a Metroid and just cause mass destruction before leaving the planet was just such a twist I didn't see coming, especially since I never played any of the previous Metroid games. Makes me intrigued on how Metroid 6 will continue the story. The OST is kind of okay. The only songs I really remember are the Arteria theme, and even though the soundtrack isn't as memorable as like Super Metroid for example, it still fits the vibe of the game and the series as a whole, and there's a few extra remixes thrown in there. The theme of Samus has never sounded better, and got me so pumped to get into the series. And with that, I'm gonna put the final game in A tier. Replaying this game for a bit to record gameplay just reminded me of all of the late nights I had in college, staying up and playing this on my newly purchased Switch OLED. It might be time for me to revisit and replay this game. Well, this is it. Every Metroid game ranked by yours truly. Like I said at the beginning, if you agree or disagree with any placings on the list, or you'd like to see a more in-depth review for each of these games, let me know in the comments below. Also, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like and share it with your friends. Also, be sure to subscribe to the channel as well as hit that notification bell, that way you get notified on any future videos I upload, as well as when I go live. Yeah, I should probably mention that I live stream on this channel at least once or twice a week, so if you don't want to miss my first playthrough of Metroid Prime 4, whenever that ends up coming out, be sure to subscribe here or follow me over on Twitch. And as always, thanks for watching the video.